So now I have to talk about cocaine. This deer, we first saw him right after Dan Dudley invited me to come up and hunt his family farm called Phoenix Farms. And we got him on trail camera, the first ever trail camera we set at Dan's place scouting for deer. And we got our first picture of him in July of 2014, and we were just amazed at how big this deer was that early in the summer. And we knew that he was going to be our target shooter. I never saw him that year, but everybody else did. Jesse Morton even got a shot at him. I don't know if he was nervous or what happened, but he shot right over his back. Almost looked like he hit him. They searched all day the next day, never even found blood. So we were confident at that point that he was still alive. Dan hung a set back at what we call the milk barn spot probably a couple weeks ago, and he only hunted it once and saw 4 bucks that evening. He said 2 of them were probably shooters. He just didn't have a shot. We hunted this place last year. One time I hunted it. Dan shot a big buck there last year, and then I shot my buck in a different spot and just didn't go back there. So it's kind of one of those sleeper spots for us up at Dan's farm. And I think, well, I know, I mean, it got rubbed up last year. We saw deer in there. I mean, it's just a good spot. So just because they were moving a couple of weeks ago doesn't mean that they were, you know, they'll move tonight. And so we're going to drive up to Dan's and get in the tree this evening. Something different about walking through a field in this part of the state that's different than where I live now. It just like smells like what it smelled like when I was growing up around these cattle farms here. So just walking through there reminds me of my childhood, and it like makes me feel like home.
A hike, but I would recommend parking at this gate because these deer come across here and go right up in there.
Scott and I have been in this place we call the Coyote Pen 3 or 4 times this year and have seen deer every time. We wanted to move the set a little bit though to get a better shooting opportunity. Dan and Cody came in here and actually moved it farther up north into this area, and walking into here I'm thinking, man, why have we not ever had the stand here in the first place? There are rubs all up and down this little, it's just an open area that comes up the fence line. we got up in this new stand, I was telling Scott that I felt like maybe we needed to be closer to the fence, and we had a couple of does come out right at the fence and walked right down the fence until they got downwind of us and one blew. But I like that spot a lot, but I hope we don't just sit there and watch bucks run down the fence line. Opening day of Missouri's rifle season, and I still hunt with the bow, but I always think it's like you can really take advantage of all the gunshots going off and deer running around all over the place. It's pretty crazy, and it's cool to see the tradition of all of the hunters that are going to be at the cafe and everyone around this morning. It's kind of cool to share stories and see other people we wouldn't otherwise see during our archery season. Rifle season in Missouri. We're hearing a lot of gunshots go off this morning and like really close to us, so we're sitting on kind of a point of a ridge that leads down to the little field where Tim shot his buck with his bow a couple of weeks ago. Got a rifle in the stand here for Scott. He's gonna fill a rifle tag this weekend, but I've got my bow. Just hope that deer start moving around. It's been a little bit sparse over the past few days.
It's opening morning of gun season, and I'm sitting here at Phoenix Farms with Joe, and we got both the rifle and the bow in the stand this morning. He's gonna try and fill his buck tag, and I'm gonna try and shoot anything that comes by that looks tasty.
This is my first time sitting here this year, so we haven't done any maintenance back here. We had like 6 deer run by us, or 5. I knew at least 3 of them were bucks. And then it's like one of them just circled around and came out at about 40 yards and walked straight past us, got up to like 30 yards. And it's just too thick in here. I never had a shot. I feel like I can still hear them down here, and I'm hoping that they keep cruising this little ridge right here so one of us can get a shot. We saw too many bucks running around up here on this ridge, so I'm gonna get down, let Scott stay up here and direct me around here. We gotta trim some better shooting lanes in this little ridge. Just gonna leave all of our stuff in the tree and get a bite to eat, pull a stand from a different spot, and get back in here pretty early this evening. Last year, when I killed my buck out here at Dan's farm, Jesse and I cut a bunch of trees to create a shooting lane the night before. And we saw so many bucks running around here this morning that we want to come back early this afternoon and get right back in this tree stand, but we just cut a ton of trees. I know we left a bunch of scent, but the wind was swirling today and we never heard a deer blow at us, so I don't know. I think they have their nose to the ground looking for does, and it's just that time, and I think we'll be okay. If not, we'll find out. I think it was 3 years ago that I sat down with my wife on opening evening of gun season and talked about how miserably hot it was. It's right at 70 degrees this evening, and try to take our time getting in here and not sweat too much, but we decided to come back to the same spot as we sat this morning because there were just bucks all over. There's a nice signpost rub over here that we saw that we didn't notice this morning, and got some better shooting lengths cut, and hopefully we see something good tonight. Scott's behind the gun, so either one of us could kill this evening. Scott turned around and tapped me and said, "Hey, here comes a doe, and there's a buck behind her." And then he said, "Oh, it's a shooter, it's a big buck." And I looked over and I saw this big 10 point. And the longer I looked at him, the more I realized that even though he was a 10 point this year and wider, this buck really looked like cocaine. Scott turned around and tapped me and said, "Hey, here comes a doe, and there's a buck behind her." And then he said, "Oh, it's a shooter, it's a big buck." And I looked over and I saw this big 10 point. And the longer I looked at him, the more I realized that even though he was a 10 point this year and wider, this buck really looked like cocaine. I just shot the biggest buck of my life. Scott was looking over here and said, "There's a buck, it might be a shooter. There's a doe coming in with a buck behind it." And he showed up and stood at about 50 yards behind brush, right in a spot that we walked over and cleared earlier today. And I needed him to take a turn towards the doe and like 3 steps, and he did it. It was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had in the woods, with that buck just staring down the doe. Opening day of rifle season, right in the rut. Dude.
Yeah, buddy.
Just telling Dan to get a search party together. I mean, we've got plenty of people here, and I know they can come in and help us, but we're gonna have to let him stay there for a while, I think. He's already facing that way, you know, and when he kicks up, see how far he's quartering there as he starts to turn.
Back that up to where he was right there.
dark.
We tracked him for over 3.5 miles the first day. We had dogs come out the next day, and you know, we did everything that we could to try and find this deer.
Scott and I went back and last weekend and put out trail cameras just everywhere. Every trail camera I have, we put out. We're gonna work really hard the second part of the season and try to find him alive, for one, on trail camera, and target him and see if we can turn the story into a happy ending. Wow, thanks for watching. If you've made it this far, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment down below, tell us what you think.